Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Origin Story, where we dive into how your favorite YouTubers got started and where they are going. I am Mike.
And I'm JP, and our guest today is Ahmed from The Car Care Nut on YouTube. Ahmed, thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey guys, how you doing? Thank you so much for having me.
Very excited for this one for sure. And in tonight's episode, we'll learn a little bit about Ahmed's past and why he decided to start a YouTube channel. So for those who don't know AMB or Ahmed or the Car Care Nut, however you want to come and find him, he's on a mission to share his knowledge and passion for cars on his YouTube channel, the Car Care Nut. He is a Toyota master diagnostics technician, but doesn't leave his viewers with only Toyota content. On his channel, he shares best practices and tips on what car will give you the smallest headache down the road from a mechanic's point of view, which I really thought was interesting. It's a great perspective. And obviously, we'll talk a lot about this. Very important when new cars are hard to come by. I think it's a huge factor for you. So, however, he doesn't just love cars. He's a family man and a musician who plays multiple instruments. And I want to talk a lot about that and how you use those in your current day life. His channel is home to over 155,000 subscribers who have watched his 176 videos over 11.5 million times. These are some amazing stats, but the one real cool factor about this is his channel is almost a little over a year old. So those stats there are good for a longtime creator, someone who had been making 4 or 5 years of videos. However, this is 1 year of work for him, and it's an extremely amazing accomplishment. You can see over his shoulder, he has that plaque, which he has well earned in that 1 year. So subscribe to his channel, check out his other social medias and his Patreon in the description below. Thank you so much for joining us. And by the way, guys, if you have a second, subscribe to our channel. Make sure you leave a comment on this video and smash the like button for the Car Care Nut. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Ahmed.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, it's a very exciting thing. I think you're one of the fastest growing YouTube channels I've ever seen, other than people who cheat and they're like, I was a professional football player and I have millions of people on Instagram. I don't count them because they're not really doing it. You came from the ground up to 155,000 subscribers and growing in, I think, about 14 months, right? We're about 14 months in.
Give or take.
Yeah, give or take a couple of days.
June 9th, 2020.
Yeah. So
started.
Well, I guess 15 months, but we're that's pretty freaking good, dude. 10,000 plus subscribers a month.
Checking out a lot of videos.
Yeah, seriously. It's I didn't even think about that. Twice a week, yeah.
That's
well over that. So we'll talk a lot about how you got into YouTube and why you did it. And he has a great video too on his channel if you want a synopsis version of it. And we'll dive into that, but we're going to dive into a little bit more of that. So I want to talk about growing up with 2 parents who are petroleum engineers in Iraq. You're now on an engineering style path. Your brother is a doctor, which I can argue is somewhat of an engineering mind, right? So you guys clearly had some kind of hand eye coordination. I don't know if that works with it, but engineering mind. So can you tell us a little bit about did their drive to be engineers drive you to want to become a mechanic?
So initially, and this is the interesting part. Initially, I was very interested in computers, and I even started going to college for computer science. But at some point, I started losing my motivation. I was always into cars, but I started losing my motivation, and I just felt like, okay, maybe this is not for me. Then actually from that, I wanted to be a car mechanic, but back home, things are different in Iraq. Car mechanics, they don't really make good income, and there was no official schools or anything. You basically just start cleaning the floor of the shop and go work your way up, that kind of deal. But when I was a kid, I always used to go to the shop that used to rebuild alternator starters. Even got a part-time gig there. It was a very interesting process to just how everything's taken apart, cleaned, repaired, put together. Ever since that, I just got a fascination with cars. I remember, and my dad, I don't know if he's ever going to watch this, but he used to hate the fact that I would go in his car and here's this probably 5 to 7 year old kid steal the keys, not to go drive the car, but just to sit in it and take things apart. He used to hate that. He would come back and things are not sitting right. It's like, what happened here? So fast forward from that, I decided I don't want to do the IT thing. Went into actually airplane. What was it called? Power plant, an airframe or something like that. Basically an aircraft mechanic, because I was a little fancier. Maybe that would be a better career path. That ended 3 months later because I just didn't like it at all, and just started working on cars back home here and there. And then fast forward many years later, moved here, went to UTI, Universal Technical Institute.
We'll pause you there because I think we want to talk a little bit more about UTI in a second. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves.
Fast forward too much.
Yeah. So before we get to UTI, because I have some questions specifically about learning there and with the world we're in here.
Sorry about that. I might have jumped the gun.
You're good. You're good.
No, you're right.
We want you to drive, but I also want to like pump the brakes a little bit and get to somewhere else. So the second question I'll ask is, you're growing up here in Iraq, you're falling in love with cars, but you also have a secondary passion on the side, which is music. And I don't think you typically talk a lot about that on your channel. And so what was the introduction that you had to music? What was the first intro to like either learning that you loved the concept of music, and then how did you implement that into instrument use?
So music was always something. It kind of came in the mix with everything. The first instrument I picked up was bass. A bunch of my friends were getting into music, and it was kind of the thing back then. I was into hard rock, heavy metal, that kind of style. Believe it or not, I was into that. Minus the long hair, because that was kind of frowned upon there. But got into that. I picked up a bass, and I still remember it. It was a 3-string bass. Bass guitars usually have 4 strings, but couldn't really afford to buy a new set of strings, so it was a 3-string bass for the longest time. That was, that comes with the territory. But I just picked it up and started playing at home. Didn't really have any education at this point or any kind of training. But then I met this one guy that started giving me lessons and books and whatnot. And it took off from there. We played with a few bands locally. And then I started a little band. It's called actually Semi-Death. That was the name for it.
I like that.
Of all names, why not?
In the prime of rock too. So
not Megadeth, just Semi-Death.
Not Semi-Death. Close. We were not copying anybody.
Yeah.
But I started playing bass, and our guitarist just decided it's time to grow up, and he moved on. So I picked up guitar actually at that point. And 2003 happened. That was when things went upside down, and it kind of fell off from there for the longest time until I picked it up later on.
And was it difficult for you to go from bass to regular guitar, or did you have like a good understanding of, I guess, string instruments? Is it hard to like go from one to the other?
Yeah, I had to downsize my hand. The thing with bass is like the strings are so huge, and coming to a guitar, you have more of them. They're tiny, and the frets are tiny, and it was an adjustment. And in the bass setup, you're not playing chords, you're single notes all the time. But it was quite a transition, but it had to happen. And I was at the age where you could learn fast and just driven by passion. If that's the word I want to use here. It was interesting transition, but it happened. I'm glad it did.
I gotta say, so it's like, it's growing up in the States, like hard, obviously, rock bands, like, it's big in the United States, but growing up in Iraq, like I was rock, was that, like those type of bands, was that pretty common there?
No, it was actually very frowned upon, the whole, this is the devil's music and all this stuff. But there was a time back, if you go back to the 70s and 80s, early 80s, mid 70s, there was actually a lot of hard rock bands. Right. But there was a disconnect from the 80s all the way into the 90s, even into 2000s. And there was at some point probably 2-3 bands only, and they were all hiding because it was very frowned upon. It was actually dangerous at some point. after 2003, it became very dangerous. They would just pick you up out of the streets. Things didn't go as well. It got worse. So that's when everything kind of came to a screeching halt. I hear now things are back, but I'm out of that scene now, so don't really know how are they doing today. But it was pretty bad at some point.
Yeah, you made a choice to move away from music, and at that time, so what replaced music in your life? Was it then cars?
Cars to a certain degree, and mostly, what's the future? That was the most thing, honestly, that occupied. I left Iraq, bounced around between a bunch of countries until I eventually landed here. But it was very tough because I have so many things that I want to do with my life, but now I've lost the one thing that connects everything together. Like, you felt like you had no country, no place. You're just all over the place trying to find home again. That was tough, but my passion for cars continued, actually. And I used to attend in the multiple countries that I went to. One of them, namely, is Jordan. I used to attend car shows, and I was very interested and tried to do this. And I still remember, my brother is not really into cars. I still remember every car I bought there, it had to be an interesting car. And he was like, "Why can't you just buy a normal car?" I'm like, "I'm a car guy, man. I can't buy just a normal car." That was always the problem there.
Yeah, back then he was probably like, "Why can't you just get like a Toyota Camry or something like that?"
Yeah, probably right. I should have, but
Yeah, and it's also too, just going back to like, being in Iraq and getting into cars. And you said you were working at some of these shops where, I don't know if parts for cars were as easily accessible or things like that, but it had to be a little bit of a different perspective than being in the States and working on cars. What was that kind of like? Was it kind of a struggle to come by parts? I mean, it sounds like you were doing some like almost remanufacturing of these types of like alternators and things like that. Like, what was that like in comparison to like, or contrast what you're doing now?
So parts were always a problem. And in the beginning of the 90s and even going into 2003, Iraq was under embargo, so you couldn't really import stuff or whatnot. So you basically had to make do with what you have. So I'll give you one example. Brake fluid was a hot commodity. It was just not available. So people would use water and soap. Didn't really work very well, but that was the closest thing you can get to it. Ball joints, when they go bad, here, when a ball joint goes bad, you just take it out, throw it to the street, and throw it in the garbage and get another one. Over there was no other one. So you take the ball joint, you press it, and it actually creates a new seat, and it'll go another 6 months. The little parts that were available, they were super expensive. And that was the time where, I don't know, a high-end doctor would make $10 a month. So you really couldn't buy much. So that was very interesting. There was nothing, mechanic shops here, and I work at a dealership, and you look at the garbage, it's like every 2 days we have to empty the garbage. Over there was no garbage because everything got reused and repurposed somehow. That was very interesting, seeing all these things, how everything is recycled 100%.
Yeah. And the reason I bring that up is just because when you come from a mindset where you're trying to learn how to fix things, learn how to do it kind of the hard way when you don't have a lot of resources, I feel like maybe that kind of formed a foundation of a lot of stuff that you do today that we'll talk to about your YouTube channel. But I think it's interesting because you're coming from like, hey, I want to understand how things work. And it's like, if we can fix it, let's fix it. Or if there's a way we can repair it or increase the longevity of something, like how do we do it? I think that's an interesting like note about how you were brought up, what you dealt with cars, your experience, and how you've gotten to where you are today, especially with this channel. So I think that adds some good contra or a good visibility into kind of how this came to fruition.
Yeah. Well, it was an interesting time. There was a lot of things that I saw there that gave me some kind of experience, even as a mechanic today. But things that you will not see again, but just that kind of mindset of you can't just start throwing parts at things to hopefully one thing will fix it. You got to actually have the knowledge, because parts are not something that is readily available. So you got to actually diagnose the car, not just, the typical thing I see today is most people just want to throw parts at the car until it's fixed. That was not something else even possible back home for me.
It's got to be refreshing though, because you probably bring a different mentality to the dealership where you might, instead of just throwing a new part at something, you might say, hey, look, wait, you don't actually need to fix this. It could just be a seal. It could just be something small. Like you can fix this very easily, where it's beneficial to both the dealership from a sourcing, and especially right now, I'm sure parts and pieces are probably harder to find.
Not available at all.
Yeah. And so, and from a customer standpoint, like you might not need to replace something, then their car is going to be in the shop for 48 hours or something like that. It's probably got to be a beneficial view. And I don't think, I don't want to get ahead of myself because I do have a question on UTI. I don't think they teach that methodology or mentality in technical school these days.
Nah, technical schools, they're interesting. And I've only been to one, but I hear the same rhetoric everywhere. It's like they teach you the right thing, but then they kind of drift away from it in a way that they're trying to teach you the right thing, but at the same time, they're trying to teach what the industry wants people to know when they graduate. And they they're all over the place a little bit, because in order for a technician to be able to actually fix cars, they need to be in the mentality of, you have to diagnose the car, not what part do I need to replace. No, how can you fix the car if you don't know how it works? You need to start from the very basics. And I see so many people, in the industry, even today, they just go from 0 to 100. They never go through the due process. They always just want to reach the end. And that rush is usually what gets them into big problems, because now you're replacing high dollar parts and you're nowhere and you're not fixed and nothing is fixed. And now you're just going in circles. But usually starts with basics. People always skip the basics. And that's usually where your 75% of car problems are.
Yeah. And it seems like a lot of those schools, maybe they're tailoring towards like, hey, obviously they want to, dealerships want to hire good people, but a lot of the things that, if you could take a guess at it, it's like they want you doing warranty repair work. They want you doing these other things. It's more about like, hey, how can we bring them in and have, to be honest, we call, everyone says stealerships. It does happen out there. And it's like, hey, what are some ways that we can kind of say, hey, we want to make sure that we're covering all these bases so that you can, perform these at a dealership, rather than saying, hey, here's how you can actually just inform your customers and be a good, relationship, two-way street with whether it's a technician and a buyer. Because I feel like there's a big gap there where they're not like, hey, listen, like, here's your build sheet, but let me just circle 4 things that you can do by yourself at home in an hour on YouTube. You know what I mean?
That was actually the mission statement of the channel. And this is, I know we're getting a little bit ahead of the podcast, but the mission statement of the channel originally was, I wanted to connect the gap between consumers or car owners and the dealership technician. Because when you go to a dealership, the first person you're greeted with is usually either the porter or a service advisor. And then fast forward until your car is back and your wallet has been drained, basically. You really don't deal with the mechanic at all. And it's a different world where you come in the front end of the dealership and you go to the back where you see how everything happens. Most people don't get access to that, and they don't see it. They don't talk to the mechanic directly. So one of the mission statements of the channel, later much more got added to it, was to connect, to have a medium where owners can listen to the mechanic directly. I'm telling you, this is from experience, ABC. And the biggest thing for me is, when you come in a dealership, there's all these politics and, they're the employer, you got to watch what you say and this and that. But when I go on YouTube, I can just tell you flat honesty. And if my employer gets upset, well, I don't know, I'll buy you a pop or something. I'll make you happy. But that's the best I can do. I can do whatever I want in my free time. Yeah. But that was the main thing about my channel, is I wanted people to hear it direct from the person who's actually going to fix their car.
Yeah. And I love that too, because that disconnect is what creates that mistrust in a poor customer experience where you say, okay, well, I took my car and I just spent, it was $1,800 for this and I'm walking away. The only thing you're walking away with is just a hurt bank account. You know, you're not really understanding the full pieces. So it's like, hey, how do we connect these dots and make it real, or try to help them out and have some customer experience around it? So that's good. But no, we'll dive into that more when we get into the current stats.
Yeah, to the YouTube page.
Yeah.
But actually, it's funny you say, like, you know, you're behind the veil. You're never ever shown to the customer, because I was doing research on you and trying to figure out, you know, where you worked, just so honestly I could find your full name and then maybe see if there's other things I could find online. And literally, I go on the Toyota dealership. They have the accountant's picture on the freaking on all of the dealerships. They all have the same controller, the accountant. They have the service manager. They have all these people, not one technician.
Yep. And you know what the best part is? In any dealership, the service department is the most profitable part of any dealership.
Yeah.
No doubt.
And the mechanics are the highest paid out of anybody in the service department. Usually, not 100% of the time, but at least in the Chicago area, that is the case. But you never see mentions, and that's just, it's like people come to the service department not to have a sip of coffee from the expired coffee machine. They don't come to chat with the service advisor or the cashier or the porter. They come to fix their car, and ultimately who's going to fix their car is the mechanic, not everybody else. So that's the interesting thing.
It was so interesting. I was trying so hard, and literally I was like, okay, maybe it's just this dealership. Then I went to another one. Then I went to another one. Then I went to another one. And every one of them, I'm like, they have the accountant, but they don't have the people who are actually doing the work here. I was shocked. So I want to go back to when we said earlier, like I had a question about technical schools and what they do. And I think right now, especially from my trade, I'm in the smart home and electrical trade. And there is an extreme deficit of kids, young, old. If you want to get a new career, technical schools are where you need to go, not college. And I think this is a message that's going out so much, and it's been diluted. Go to college, get a 4-year degree. But really, you go to college, you get $150,000 in debt to go make $40K after college. Where if you were to go to a technical school, if you're smart and savvy, you can get out of there in 24 months or less, 18 months, and you're going to get paid one of the highest prices at a dealership. You can go work at BMW. You can do fun things. You're working on cars. You're doing things with your hands. So I think it's a really cool thing that you did this later on in life to get your full degree at UTI, which I think is, you know, a great thing to do in the world. I think many young kids should do it. So what was one great lesson that you learned from going through a technical school rather than pursuing a traditional college degree, which a lot of people who immigrate to the U.S. do?
So honestly, I'll say this about my history of school. I dislike when you go to college, you're going to study one major, and it feels like the first year you talked about anything but your major. And that's very typical. I really dislike that. And I purposely looked for schools that did not have the fluff attached to education, which I understand some of it is important, but not really relevant to what you're going to do. I remember going to UTI, and that was the first question I asked them. I'm like, okay, so it seems like a short course, but how does it start? What are the courses? What's going on here? And when he told me, let me take you and show you what the first day of UTI looks like, it was engine repair. Basically, day one, here's an engine that'll never run, that every single student that went through the school broke something on it. You're going to take it apart, put it back together for 3 weeks. That was day one. It starts with that and then goes for 3 weeks. Practical. I'm like, you know what? I'm in, because I just don't like sitting around talking about other subjects that are not related to what I want to study. But the one thing about technical schools that I saw through my time in it, they have one fatal flaw. And this seems to be everybody, not just UTI. They treat their students as customers. So basically, if you fail or pass, you still pass. Even if you're failing and your grades are horrible, you still pass and progress. I don't think that should be the case. And that was one of their biggest downfalls. But what I would say about a technical school is you really have to focus and you really have to understand and be that one, uncool student that sits in the front and is a teacher's pet, because you really need to learn. Going into this, I was a father already. I was barely making it between working and going here because I couldn't work a full time anymore because of UTI. So I was like, the teacher sometimes would tell me, relax, why are you asking so many questions? I'm like, I'm paying you a small fortune in tuition. Yeah. I need to learn. Yeah. And everybody would look at me like, here's this bunch of 18-year-olds. They're like, relax, man, life is good. I'm like, it's not for me because I got to get going.
Yeah.
That was the only way that you could actually learn the science of cars. See, most people assume you go to school, you graduate, you're a master technician. That is not even close to being the case, because car repair is a craft. And I think this is where the technical school kind of dilutes it, where, come and graduate, and you're going to be a master technician. Well, that's not the case. But probably 5-10% of it is science, and the rest of it is experience. And experience you're going to learn the hard way. And that's how this works. But technical school is very helpful because it gave you the foundation that you're not there to replace parts, you're there to fix things right. And here's how everything works. So once you go out in the field, you can actually have the science part of things that you can apply to your actual experience. But I see many people graduate from UTI, from technical schools. They go into these schools with the mentality of, I'm going to college. It's not college. You're usually, when you go to UTI, the guy that is the instructor, he's a retired mechanic.
Yeah.
Sometimes he's not the best educator in the world. He's going to educate you as mechanics would educate you. So you really got to pay attention. You got to try to take as much from that experience as possible that they are giving you, not just sit down, relax, and enjoy the ride, because then you're going to graduate and you didn't learn anything.
It's more like a paid apprenticeship where, like if you want to become an electrical contractor, eventually own your own business, you've got to become a journeyman. You've got to before that, you have to become a tradesman. So your first day on the job, you're showing up, you're pulling wire, you're doing things, boring holes in boards, looking at plans, looking at how to do things. And I always tell, if anyone were to tell me like, what should I go to college? I'm like, if you don't like school today, you're not going to like college. And if you really like working with your hands, figure out a trade that you'd like to do, because you're going to make a ton more money doing it right now, especially if you would have graduated 5 years ago, if you would have started as an electrical contractor and now you're a fully licensed electrical contractor today, you're making well more than any kid who did a 4-year degree.
Yep.
Guaranteed.
Yes. That's unfortunate, but that's the way it is these days.
Yeah. It's any state in the country, any trade that you go through, carpentry, plumbing, mechanics. I'm sure you guys can't get enough of them. I appreciate that because it really is something I think I'm passionate about driving people to do. And look, you can always become a mechanic and start a YouTube channel and have the balance of the world in those kind of things, or what you call your third child. So I really appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
JP, you want to?
No, I was going to say the whole. I like the holistic approach of what to do too, and it's like what you said. It's like, hey, we're not just replacing parts; we're fixing the problem. It's like, yeah, we can get you new brakes, but also all of your bushings are shot. So if you want to talk about safety, like let's go through some other things that are wrong with your car. Let's talk about a holistic issue. Like we can get you on the road if you just need to, do whatever. But here's what you should be doing, which I do like, and it's good to get that holistic approach. Now UTI as well, like there is still like an interpersonal, like you got to deal with tough service managers or whoever you might be dealing with. Like, did they teach any of those type of classes as well? Just like, hey, here's how you handle situations, or did they kind of put that just like on a peripheral learning piece as you go along?
So UTI on the second course, the first course I told you it was like hands-on engine repair. Every three weeks you change to a different course. So it's not like multiple subjects in each week. The second course was actually, I think it was called service writing or administrative stuff. So basically their thought process is, do you want to become a mechanic or do you want to be a service advisor? And unfortunately, service advisors, finding real service advisors today is a rarity, because service advisors, they're supposed to take that heavy technical lingo that mechanics use, dilute it down to a consumer version where people actually understand what you're trying to tell them, which never really happens. Very rarely will you find a real service advisor. But basically, the second course is for you to decide, do you want to be in the fix the car business, or do you want to be in the translate mechanic lingo business, the service advisor? So that course kind of talks about dealership operations, shop operations, how to deal with customers, how all the inner politics of a dealership work, and most importantly, how to deal with people. It is a very interesting. I still remember a lot of things from that course that I never thought about. Things like the understanding of an employee, how hard it is for dealerships to fight against that reputation that follows them. It is very difficult, and it only takes one mistake from an employee to push that customer out, and we'll never see them again. I think it was called the 10-10-10 rule. Takes the dealership $10,000 in advertisement to bring one customer in. Takes a bad employee, 10 seconds to give a bad impressions. And then it takes that same dealership 10 years to get that same customer back in the door. That was a very eye-opening thing.
Yeah, that's a big stat.
No doubt about that.
Yeah, I mean, customer service is paramount. So, you're going to go where it's, especially when you could, you could say it's a commodity, saying like, hey, well, I'll just go to another place that's going to charge about the same, but maybe I get a better experience. So, yeah, no, I was curious if they kind of put it in those soft skills as well. So that's good to know. Now, real quick about cars. So what was your first car? What was the first car you ever owned?
1980 Datsun 810B. I want to call it a car, but it was the reason I became a mechanic, probably because
sometimes it was a car.
Well, the ratio was about 1 day out of 10. That was the average. It worked 1 day, then 9 days no.
That was your own 10 by 10 rule, like 1 in 10 rule that you had?
Yeah, that was a terrible car, but I was very happy with it. I loved it. It was the equivalent of $300 today.
Wow.
So it was terrible. It looked nice, but that's when nice ended. It broke so much that I think that's the reason why I became a mechanic. I mean, and the best part is, and this is one of the biggest mysteries in my life. That car was stolen toward the end.
Okay.
I could never get the thing to run. It broke down. I'm like, all right, I gotta go. Let's just leave it here. And it was stolen. It's like, how did you start it?
It was stolen by a mechanic, and he needed it for a single part because parts were rare to find on the docks in Iraq.
Except that car, nobody wanted parts out of that.
They were like, we're trying to get rid of these.
The carburetor. Thank you, Nissan, for the greatest contribution to humanity with the carburetor, with the glass on the side of it. I think anybody that owned one of these carbs will know that that's the worst design in the planet.
Yeah, it just got all black.
It's so easily flooded. It floods. So you gotta take the bottom of the glass, drain the gas out of the carb, and then hopefully it'll start again. You do that like 10, 15 times, and it'll eventually catch, and we're good.
Yeah,
that was fun.
I clearly know nothing about cars.
This is where you start to learn a lot, though, buying cars.
Yes.
I always like talk about the car process and like what people's first cars were, especially for like automotive YouTubers, just to bring them on, because it kind of opens that Pandora box. Like, okay, this starts to make sense a little bit. So, when did you get your first car? How old were you?
Probably 15, 16, somewhere in that neighborhood.
And then after you
were exactly the age, but somewhere around there.
Yeah. And then, so did you get into also, like you have a passion for cars. So like what happened next? What was the first car you actually liked that you loved? That you're like, okay, now I'm going to fix everything on this. I'm going to tune it up. I'm going to get it looking right.
So actually my second car was a 1989 Supra, and that's what got me into Toyota.
Okay.
Gotcha.
And we're probably similar age. Do you remember playing Gran Turismo back in the day?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Do you remember that there was one of the early car when you go through the career path of the game? One of the very first cars you can buy was actually that 89 Supra, and it was the coolest thing on the planet.
Yeah.
And what I actually saw, and these cars were super rare in Iraq. When I saw one, I chased the guy, and it's like the universe was working with me that day. go to chase the guy, and the guy actually stopped, and he was a nice guy. He didn't, shoot me in the face or something because I was chasing him like a maniac. But I told him, I don't care how much you want. I'll find a way to get it, but I want to buy your car. He looks at me, he goes like, yeah, I'll sell it to you. I'm actually trying to sell it, but nobody wants to buy it because nobody knows what it is. I bought it, and 3 days later, the head gasket blew. And of course, that's just the part of it. That's the fun.
He was looking for a sucker, is what he was looking for.
Yes. No one wants to buy it.
But the strangest thing is when the car broke down, and here's the radiator cap open and the steam is blowing all over the car, I was happy. That was the weird part, because now I get to work on it not long after I bought it. So that was the car that stayed with me for a long time. Actually, that car stayed all the way until I left Iraq. Then my parents had to sell it. That car stayed for a long time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I may or may not have chased a lady down in a parking lot to buy a 1997 Integra GSR recently. So, just a passion play. She actually didn't. I was like, here's my number. If you ever go to sell it, don't give it back to Acura. I said, and she's like, oh, I bought a brand new 97. And I have this on one of my YouTube channels as well, but it's essentially, she didn't call me. I mean, forever. And like, it was a household thing. I was like, I wonder if Susan's ever going to call me about the Integra GSR. And then 15 months later, she pulled my number out of the drawer. She saved it, called me and said, hey, you said, if I ever going to sell this, but if you're ever going to sell this, call me first. And she's like, so here I am, I'm calling you. And I went and bought it the next day. So
literally
that's the way you got to do it.
4 weeks or maybe 2 months before that, he had just gotten rid of his older car, which is a BMW, X5, and he got an Audi because he was like, I'm never going to find this car. And fate brought it.
There you go. Yeah. Was that X5 with a 4.4 liter?
No, it was the N62. It was a 4.8 IS. So it was the X5M before the X5M. And you want to talk about car companies that tried to make parts fail a lot. Plastic chain guides on that N62 V8.
Yes.
Rear bushings. Don't get me started on BMW.
Yes, I love German cars. I actually own a few, but it just there are moments in the time of the ownership. It's like, did you guys purposely? Do you think this was an inside joke? Like, let's make this $3 O-ring fail very early and then cost you 20 hours in labor to replace it. I think that was like an internal joke.
100%. Well, that's a marketing term. It's planned obsolescence. It's genius. I mean, iPhone does it, Apple does it, everyone's doing it. But if you ever see an E53 chassis X5, I guarantee the back wheels are like this from those rear bushings every time you see one on the road. And they're just like, you just look at the back wheels and you're like, all right, that's classic, the bushing failure from the E53 chassis.
I bought an Audi.
Very common.
I bought an Audi.
Toyota didn't get that memo.
No.
Yeah.
I bought an
they didn't get that yet. Hopefully never, but yet.
I literally had to change my tires. It was like $1,800 to change my freaking tires. And they were like 10,000 mile tires or something ridiculous. I sold that thing and I got a Tacoma, and the entire maintenance of owning the Tacoma for 4 years was like, I think a total of $55. With Toyota Care, there was nothing. I beat the hell out of that thing too. And now I have a 4Runner, and I had to pay my first $56 for an oil change and something. There was some other thing I had to do. And it was like $56. And I was like, okay, cool. Whatever. This is it. And I'm never ever. I really just want to get the Tundra, but I can't force myself to get rid of the 4Runner. It's like literally the greatest car in the world.
I mean, great car. And I mean, the prices are, you can't, finding a used 4Runner, forget about it.
I want to pull back real quick, because I want to go back to cars that you own, not us. It's not about us. So you moved from Iraq to Jordan, where you accrued multiple cars, you said earlier, right? Cars that were interesting. You never got
two of them were. The rest of them were fluff, but two of them were kind of interesting. The first one was, which there is a certain tree in Jordan, in Amman, the capital, that still remembers that car. We'll get to that in a second. It is a Daihatsu Charade, and car nobody has heard of. If you see it in the street, open with the key on the dash. You wouldn't open the door and take it. But it's actually a very interesting car because it has a 3-cylinder. And then we're talking, this is a 92, 91 K car from Japan. Yeah. It's a 3-cylinder turbo. You think of that today, it's like, this is not a fast car, but this is a car that weighs, I don't know, 800, 900 kilos. Whoa. We're talking less than 2,000 pounds.
K-car series.
Yes. So it made probably 100 horsepower, 90, maybe 95, but that was a lot for the weight. And then bought that, modified it heavily, roll cage. In Jordan, what was very a popular sport was autocross, or what was it, mountain something. Even the king of Jordan was into that mountain autocross.
Yeah.
Very dangerous. You're basically going down a mountain full blast, cliff on one side and mountain on the other side. It was very dangerous.
Yeah. Some rudimentary rally racing.
Almost on tarmac though, on asphalt. But bought that, roll cage, gutted the interior, all this stuff, modified the engine, and it made, I remember the dyno number, it was 205 to the wheels. That is a scary number in a car that weighs less than a ton.
That's ripping.
It's like a go-kart.
That's a go-kart.
Yes, it's basically, it was wild. So drove that for a while until I decided to change the wheels. And we put, at the time, Jordan is still not a very, open country where everything's available, but it's much better. But I bought this set of wheels from an imported car, whatever the case may be. And apparently they were knockoff wheels. They were not real wheels of what I thought they bought. And we're racing one day, and not on the street, of course. And the wheel broke, like literally just snapped off the hub. And here we go. Car went sliding. It crashed into the pole, turned around, crashed into a tree, and it crashed like multiple times. I just remember opening my eyes after everything stopped. Here, of course, the car's roll cage. I have a 6-point harness. And I get off the car, and there's stuff on the road. One of them was the engine and transmission, and one of them was the battery. I'm like, yeah, I think this car is done at this point.
Yeah, but the battery can still be salvaged. You can use that for something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure it was good, but yeah, that was not good. That was terrible. So of course, I learned my lesson. I was going to go buy a safe car and everything. So I bought a 1978 BMW E. It was it was a 318, but it had they call it the black top. It's basically a 3.0 from a 93, 94 M3.
Whoa.
It was swapped. And the party piece of that is it had a welded differential. So it was a very safe car.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
Yeah. I think the first day I drove it, I ended up in a ditch. That was day one. And, but then that car,
but at least you can put down 11s, you're not, you're doing a burnout, you're spinning both wheels. So,
well, it literally every time you shift into second gear and you let the clutch go a little bit too fast, the wheel starts spinning. Yeah. There was a welded diff. That was, it was a scary car to drive. When there's any kind of rain, you do not want to drive that car. It was terrible.
I can't even imagine. Yeah. You just let it go and just gone.
Yeah. Every time it rained with that car, we were down for a few hours because the water would get through the windshield, and it had a custom wiring, whoever did it before. So the water would get inside the ECU, and I had 4 garbage bags around it. That didn't work. So it was like, okay, well, can't fix that. Water will still get in it no matter what. That's actually in the end what killed it. My brother took it, my non-car person brother, and it rained on him. Back in that time, there was no iPhone and all. We can predict the weather. We just go and hope for the best. So it rained on him, and it filled the ECU with water. It actually activated the injectors wide open. So it flooded the cylinders, hydrolocked the motor, and it just blew up. And that was that.
That's the end of that.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate. That's a beautiful car, though.
Yeah, it is a very nice car.
Yeah.
Might still have a picture of it somewhere.
It's a nostalgic item. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. So that makes sense of why your brother might have told you, hey, maybe you should get like a safe, regular car in Georgia.
Yeah.
something reliable. And so then you come to the States, join the Toyota family after going to UTI, and it takes you another 12 or so years until, you know, via chance, you're pushed into creating YouTube videos out of boredom, and your wife is telling you, you know, you should be doing YouTube, you should be doing YouTube, you should be doing YouTube, and now you are. So I think you're making the best of a global pandemic now, and you took that opportunity, you ran with it. So now you're 155,000 subscribers in. You got the plaque over your shoulder. You know, what was it like when you posted your first video?
So I was actually sitting right here where I'm at. This is my home garage. This is my toolbox. That it was actually the day before I launched my first video. I was freaking out. You know, I don't know if you guys remember the first time you had to talk to a camera. It's a very strange feeling. I never thought of that. I was just so worried about my information being correct, and I was like going through my resources. I think it was a Camry video.
Yeah.
Common problems with a Camry. So I'm worried about that. And I never worried about how are we going to actually record this. So I'm like, at the end, my wife's like, how are you going to record this? I'm like, I don't know, just with my phone. But he says, you don't even have a tripod. I'm like, yeah. So I actually backed my car, put the thing on it, and it was a very interesting setup. It was not even a tripod. Filmed that video. I think I have this original footage of most of my videos, but that one was like 3 hours. It was a 12, 13-minute video. It was 3 hours to record that, because kept record, take the phone, listen to the whole thing. I don't like this. I don't like this. I am very picky, and I do have a little bit of OCD, maybe not a little bit, a lot, but I just kept going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And in the end, when I put everything together, and I remember my wife sitting next to me, I'm like, I hate it. She goes like, just upload it. I'm like, all right, whatever, let's do it. So I upload the video, and that was the 8th. That was the day before I actually made it go live, because it took me a while to figure out, okay, what do we do? What's going on here? And put the video on. The next day, we were supposed to release it, and it was a day that I'm off, I'm home. So release the video, and I'm like, okay, now what's going to happen? I remember it initially, I released the video, and it got like 3 views. I'm like, that's probably me watching the video twice to my wife. Yeah. I'm like, okay, well, now what? My wife was like, go to Facebook, post the video to all your friends, and I'll do the same. I'm like, it's been like 3 years I haven't opened my Facebook. I'm not really big on social media at that time. So, okay, let's try it. So I open it, people start jumping. And I remember the first day we got 37 subscribers, and I was shocked, because those were family and friends and people we knew. I was shocked that, oh my God, they actually watched my video, and got motivated enough to start the second one. But right around that time, I was in the process. I used to have a 2012 Toyota Camry that got in an accident, was totaled. So I was in the process of, I don't want another car payment. I've already had my dream car here. I just didn't want another car payment. I was almost done with that. So I'm like, let me buy a beater, and we'll see what happens, and we'll go from there. That's a very typical thing with mechanics. So I picked up a 99 ML320 off of a friend of mine that I worked with. It was a total garbage can, but I wanted to drive it for a year or so, see what happens. I just didn't want to buy a car at that point. But I was like, well, it needed some repairs. Let's just do it on the channel. Why not? So I started recording that on the side. Did the second Camry video, then I did that. And initially I thought, well, who's going to want to watch Toyota content? You know, listen to, here's a guy in his garage just talking about common problems. I think they will be more interested in the Mercedes video. My wife always told me the opposite, and she was right.
Very much so, based on numbers.
Yeah, I think she was very right. But then all of a sudden, I did my first Mercedes video. It was a pain. I mean, I have to say this. You know, there's a lot of YouTubers that I watch. You know, Hoovie's Garage, Legit Street Cars, all these guys. It is very difficult to make a video working on a car. It is extremely difficult, like rebuilding a car from the ground up. It's very difficult. But I saw that too much work. And it's like, I put the video, it had 100 views. And I'm like, that's great. But then what's next? I put the third Camry video. And I thought the first initial 2 videos, I was, throwing jokes and making fun of this, making fun of that. My wife told me, why don't you become a little bit more serious? People will take you more seriously. Okay. Do the third Camry video. And that's the video that actually caught my attention that, okay, rebuilding the car is not it. This is it. Because I put that video and I don't know, maybe a day or 2, the video had 1,000 views. I was like, ooh, that is interesting. I remember looking at the analytics and I'm looking at the impressions and it just went crazy. I think it had like 24,000 impressions. I'm like, what just happened here? So I tried to duplicate whatever I did for that video, for the previous videos. And that's when I discovered the whole world of the algorithm. I actually I opened a YouTube channel. I didn't even know what the algorithm was. I'll just come out and say it. It's, so after that, I started kind of researching. And then the channel was already started and I started researching. And I started understanding the algorithm, what people want to watch. And then I remember one of the video, I think it was Think Media channel. I started watching a lot of their stuff. They're a really good channel for starting YouTubers.
Yeah, for sure.
He said at some point, you could make the best video in the world, but if nobody finds it, it'll just sit there. And I was like, that is very interesting. And that's when I started making my shift toward, well, what do people want to watch? And I started making a few general videos, and all of a sudden it just started taking off. And then actually branched off to Facebook. Facebook initially was my main place. I didn't even have an Instagram before that. Facebook was my main thing. I started going into Camry groups and like Toyota groups and advertise the video. It was very rough initially, honestly. And I still remember the first thumbs down on a video. That hurt. That hurt a lot.
It does. Especially a lot. You put so much time into these things, and it's your emotions, and someone's just like, no,
don't like it.
And then the first negative comment, I think, and I still remember that one because it hurt me so much. And it's like, why am I doing this? It was like, well, one of the Camry videos, the guy wrote, "Would you even know what you're talking about?"
Yeah.
It's like, and I actually reply to it. I usually try not to engage negative comments because it's a waste of energy. I'd rather focus my energy on the positive and people who actually have a question or need something. But I actually reply to him. I'm like, I actually do.
Yeah.
So this is what I do for a living. But it hurt. That was really bad. That was, starting on YouTube and the first negative comment you get, it hurts. It hurts a lot.
And then you find out that it's and then you find out that it's like a 13-year-old boy. And you're like, never mind.
Yeah, usually it is.
They don't know anything.
You have to hit him with sarcasm. You have to hit him with sarcasm. I remember our first negative comment was just like, it wasn't even directed towards me. It was directed towards Drew, who was on the channel a while ago. And they're like, who is that other guy? Because he just really didn't talk a lot during the conversation. And I was like, that's Drew. He's the co-host. You got to hit him with start. Like, I don't know. What do you want me to say? Like, do you not understand the intro? But it's tough to do that. But like, you engage and so now you're growing. So you're posting these videos and you're getting from 300 to thousands of views to thousands of impressions. Now you have 11.5 million views. But there had to have been conversations early in June or late May on what was the name of the channel. So how did you come up with the car care nut and the logo? Because I will say from the first videos I watched of you, you still had a lot of these kind of things going. So how did you come up with the logo and the name?
So the name, I'll start with the name. We sat down like maybe a week before to talk about the name. Initially, AMD's Garage came up. I remember my wife suggesting, why don't you make it Toyota Specialist or Toyota this? I'm like, I want my own identity. I don't want to use a company's name and something next to it. And then
piggybacking off the brand, essentially.
Yes.
Yeah.
But in the end, I always associated myself as a nut for something. And there was another channel that was a close friend. I don't know if you guys have seen it, the Lawn Care Nut.
Oh, no, I haven't.
I think so.
And the first day that my wife saw that was a long, probably a year, at least 2-3 years before that. As soon as she saw the name of the channel, she's like, "Oh, you are the car care nut. He's the lawn care nut. You're the car care nut." Well, fast forward, I actually know the guy that runs the channel. Don't know him face to face, but we talk. He actually coached me on my home lawn. So we talked. I always told him I was a mechanic. And I was like, why don't we just go with the car care nut? He goes like, he likes it. I like it. But I'm like, this is a little bit close to him. I actually contacted him before because I had some ongoing friendship with him. I contacted him, Alan Hain. He's an awesome guy. I'm like, hey, I'm starting a YouTube channel, The Car Care Nut. Does that bother you? He's like, oh, I think it's actually pretty cool. But okay, let's roll with it. Let's do it.
I love that. Like, it shows who you are as a personality. Like, you contacted him. It's like you're a good person in general. You want to make sure it's not just like, oh, I'm going to rip. There's so many people these days that are just like trying to change one letter that's capitalized so that they can bounce off of, Mr. Beast or something like that. I love how you're like, oh, I know him. I'm going to run it past him to make sure, because if not, I can come up with another name, I'm sure. That's amazing. That's beautiful.
Yeah, because I just don't. But then the more I thought about it, it's like, you cannot, the car care nut, the lawn care nut, you might think but one guy is talking about lawns, one guy is talking about cars. That is the two completely separate entities.
Both nuts, though.
Yes.
Yeah, there's going to be some OCD in there, between those two, for sure.
He's an awesome guy. I highly encourage you to check out his channel. He's awesome.
Oh, yeah, we will. And I followed I don't know, there's a lot of lawn. There's a guy in Australia that does lawns, but he does it like golf course style. So he has like perfect yards. So
is it Ben Sims?
I don't know. My
Ben Sims is, dude. That's
my YouTube follows are all over the place. So you never know.
I definitely love me some lawn care in the background because it's just fun to watch.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So for your channel, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. So I feel like you help bridge the gap of like do-it-yourself Toyota owners or just like informational for that. Was that, I mean, you talked about that mission and bridging that gap. I mean, when you look at this now, I mean, is that like your continued strategy? Or you always like have something on the docket, or like, how are you coming up with your content that you're creating now? And how are you kind of staying on top of like what Toyota owners are looking for, what they might want? What are the hot trends? Like, here's some hidden secrets. Like what's kind of your overall strategy for coming up with the content? Especially when you're adhering to like, Toyota as a whole.
Well, working in the industry helps because then I get to see what the owners are complaining about. I see people like certain car problem trends. I see RAV4 owners, they have this problem and they're all complaining about it. I see one after one after one. That's a good topic to talk about. But the main thing that really drives my content today is the viewers. It's usually as a YouTuber, when you have a really solid and awesome viewer base, you got to listen to them because these are the people that are spending enough time to watch you talk and give them something. Yes, they might gain something out of the information you're giving them, but these are actually people who are willing to sit down, listen to you. You got to do the same to them. I think that is a good mutual thing to do. So I listen to them. Sometimes things are not possible. Like they request certain videos that I can't do. I don't have the materials. I don't have the specific car to do, or it's something just, can't tear apart an engine in the house. But most of the time, I actually listen to them, see what they want. I get the same requests for the same, and I make a small list. Every time I get a request, I put it on a list. And when I get the same request over and over, I see that number of requests rising, then that's going to be the next topic. But sometimes, and this is kind of the turning point lately, As I get more viewers and viewers want to stop by, have me check their car, sometimes that's dictating the content because I get a car here to work on and I'm like, well, let me whip the camera out, let's film it and let's make a video with it. That sometimes in the moment comes up, but for the most part, I'm trying to follow. I have put a few guidelines in the channel. I don't like to talk about. I might be a little too harsh on car journalists sometimes. Yeah. And if anybody gets offended by that, I do apologize in advance. But I just feel like journalists always come hard on Toyota. Oh, they're horrible, drab, boring cars. Well, guess what? 95% of people on the road, they want that style car because not everybody's a car guy. That's the difference. So people, when they buy cars and they watch reviews, they don't care about most of the stuff that journalists talk about. They just want to know, is this a good car? Is this going to be comfortable, have the features that I want? But most importantly, is this going to break my bank? Nobody talks about that part.
Yeah. I think it's the third biggest investment you make in life, essentially, right? Yeah. Is what they look at. So I see a lot of that. I mean, Toyota owners, obviously, like, there are the performance cars that you can get, or, those people that are like, hey, I want the new TRD Tacoma or whatever. But there's a lot of folks, well, like you said, a huge percentage of people that are just like, hey, I want a good car that's going to be a good investment. It's going to last a long time. It's going to be safe, not going to have issues. If it does have issues, maybe there's a YouTube channel I can go and check out and figure out an easy way to fix it. You know what I mean? So that's great.
And just like homes, 90% of homes sold, 90% of cars sold. And this is I don't know if the stat is right, but I'm guessing here, 90% of cars sold are used, right? A very small portion of cars are actually, you just see dealerships with new cars, but the majority of cars sold and bought in the United States of America are used cars, just like homes. Not many people build a home. Almost every home sale is a used home. So, the content for, Doug DeMuro or someone else putting out a review of the 2022 TRD Tundra, I'll say that because that's the car I really want to get one day.
Nice.
Everyone wants to see it because it's cool features and benefits. But the reality is they're like, okay, I'm really looking at buying this $5,500 Toyota Camry, and they type that in and they're like, oh, cool. I see it on his channel. Oh, it is really reliable, but I gotta worry about this one thing that could bring me down. So then they see it and they go, did you get this done? And the guy gives them a report from a dealership. He said, I had that bearing replaced or something. Okay, cool. Deal. Let's do it. Yeah. As well as evergreen content, right? Your content's never going to go to waste because if you're doing a car 2017 Camry video or 2015 to 2017, that car is still in play for the next 20 years.
Yeah, basically that's how it is with Toyotas.
Yeah.
And another thing I realized, and this was early on, and it was kind of a shocking thing to me. Initially, when I started, I'm like, okay, well, let's look at topics, trending topics. There's no such thing, by the way, in the car world because you can never really guess what's trending in the car world. In my segment, if you would, the biggest thing was I always thought, okay, if I want to make a video topic and I Google it, go look on YouTube, there's like thousands of videos on the same topic. I'm like, this is already covered. I don't need to go into it. That was one of my mistakes at the beginning. It's like, even though a topic has been covered, people want to get multiple perspectives. Yeah. And that was something that I changed actually recently. I started hitting subjects that are already covered. It's not about who covers it first. It's about the more perspective people can get, the better. And that's what actually, common topics that are overly covered doesn't mean that I shouldn't. I actually should, because these are sought after topics and people might want a different perspective. That was an interesting thing that I never thought before.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess also, and I just when I look at your channel and I see the content you produce, I see a very sparse. Besides, which we should talk about here shortly, is about the live Q&As. But Lexus, you don't really focus a whole lot on Lexus. I know you have some on those Q&As, etc. What's the deal, man?
Join the viewers. That is the biggest thing. So every time I either get a Lexus here to work on, it's either someone that says they're not comfortable filming with their car. I always take permission from owners, or it is something that happens quick and I'm not ready, or it's not the type of thing that I want to record. Or I try to ask family friends, they have Lexus, hey, I need your car to have it here so I can film with it. No, we don't, we can't, we have to do this. And it just never happened. And I actually have gotten to a point where I'm like, all right, we have to do the Lexus thing because this is something that is highly requested by the viewers. And I keep pushing it. So hopefully in the next 2-3 weeks, I am actually going to flat go and rent one. Turo. I don't know if you guys use Turo. Yeah, I'm just going to rent one and do videos with it because they really want to see Lexus content and they're going to get it.
Yeah, because it's the craze, the GX470 craze over the last couple of years of buying used GX470s is crazy. Right. Everyone's buying them. Everyone's turning them into off-roaders. They're doing everything like that's, I feel like that's a big piece of content right there. Because I saw those values going up and I was like, they have great reliability, for the most part, et cetera. Maybe you could tell us more about it. But I think that's one that's like, I know that trend has been pretty big and it's hard. It's getting harder and harder and harder to find those as people start cutting the fenders off and welding on bumpers and doing everything else. So
speaking of the GX470, this is one of the cars that this is actually a customer at the dealership that he's a very nice guy. He's the kind of guy that, no, I don't want to deal with the advisor. I want to talk to the mechanic directly. Super nice guy. He's in the process of having a kid. So kind of hard to bring his truck over here. But This guy has a 2006 GX470. He's the original owner. It has 210,000 miles. In the last year, he have spent, and hold your breaths, guys, at the dealership with me, $18,000.
What?
For storing the whole thing. I mean, the thing is incredible. Pristine. You would not believe this is a 2006 with 200,000 miles. Everything is new on the truck.
Still a baby, though. It's still a baby. It's still in its infancy of the GX470.
And it's almost like a testament to nowadays the price of new and used cars. It's like, might as well throw $18,000 back into this and just have it new again.
Yeah. His exact words were, I am rebuying my car.
That's actually, I respect that move. I respect the move. Now that is expensive at a dealership cost for sure, or just any route, but that's pretty awesome. And that's a big, I feel like that's a huge base that's growing right now. Is those GX470s.
Yeah, my cousin is one. So I want to go back to what JP said earlier, which is like, okay, so going live was something you started. I didn't really find the middle ground, but so you started doing that to, I would imagine, find information out from your subscriber base and help to grow that. How has that really impacted both your relationship with the subscriber base, but also the growth of your channel?
So the live streams. So initially, my promise to the viewers was I will answer read or answer if needed, every single comment. I will respond to emails and never really mentioned social media. That just kind of happened. The comments I still do. I actually read every single comment and reply when needed. That is probably the hardest thing to do right now with the channel. Dang. Pretty big pledge.
Keep up. Yeah.
Dang, that's a bold move.
Yeah, it is. I actually do that. But the emails got out of hand because initially I would get, 3 emails a day, 2 emails a day. I can handle that. But then we got to a point, there was actually, you look at it in the analytics, there was like a jump. All of a sudden we went from having 2-3 emails a day to 100 emails a day. That is a little difficult to keep up with. And I tried. Trust me, I tried. I am very OCD and very organized where I can just try, but it was just impossible. I would have to quit my job, quit making YouTube, quit my family too, and just answer emails. It was impossible. So there had to be a different way. There had to be a better way. So I figured, okay, I see some YouTubers do a Q&A. One of them is actually Scotty Kilmer, which a lot of people seem to call me the young Scotty Kilmer. I don't think we have a lot in common, but
I don't
that's
think
a whole different story.
No, but you got to respect. Game respects game.
He is though. I respect him a lot actually, because many people say he's clickbait, and yeah, he can be, but he's an old school mechanic. He actually reminds me of my mentor, but he's a real deal. But he's an old school mechanic. Anyways, he does a live stream, and I admire what he does in the live stream. He tries to help people flat out, no agenda, no nothing else. I respected that. I'm like, you know what? I'm getting to that point where I want to help people, but I also want to have time for my family, for work, for everything else. Let's do a live stream, see how it goes. Actually, it went great. I thought I was going to go on the live stream. And I remember what was the channel at, subscriber wise or whatnot, but it was a lot less than it is now. I went to the live stream and I figured, well, there's probably going to be 3-4 people. They're probably going to ask 2-3 questions, and then that'll be that. That's okay. It was not like that. There was 350 people that first live stream. And initially when I started, it was like 20-30 people, and they started writing in the chat. But then all of a sudden we're over 300. If I remember, it was 352 or somewhere around there. And it was nonstop. Just question after question after. I'm like, oh my God, this is a little much. I think that live stream went over an hour and a half, to a point where it's like, I didn't even, going into this, I didn't even think what was going to be the end here. I had no idea. We were just
how do you close it out?
How do I close it out? I never thought of that. All my thought process was, oh, there's going to be 2-3 people, we're going to answer their questions, and then, okay, bye.
Yeah.
It was not that.
Yeah. Now that you have the line by the tail, what do you do next? You know what I mean? That's what you got into.
I literally was like, okay, do I just stop at a certain question? The next person is going to feel bad that I just skipped their question and stopped. And it's like, how do you end this?
Yeah. It's very cool though. I like that because, in a way it's like you're almost being a professor, right? Like you're giving back. You get to give back to that community, especially those like, the people who are really excited about your channel and your content they want to talk about Toyota. I don't know. Do they call like Toyota heads, Toyota nerds? What are they? Does Toyota fans have a name?
Toyota guys, Toyota fans.
Just Toyota dudes being guys. Got it. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great.
And I noticed something in the live stream. Most of the people that are asking questions, there's a lot of repetitive questions, a lot of them. And most of the questions are not actually DIY. Sometimes they are, but the overall majority, they're just normal car owners. Those 95% that we talked about,
right,
that are not car people. They just own a car. They want to know information about it. And that was the interesting thing about that. They're either shopping for a car. What do you think of this car? I have this car. I have this mileage. What do you think of maintenance I should get? My car has this problem, this noise. Is there anything common? It's usually those kind of questions. So every once in a while, you get like that specific enthusiast question where I have this specific car with this specific code. What's going on with it? I did this. And usually those kind of questions are really hard to answer right on the fly, because I have to look at my resources, read the code, do a little bit of research and understanding, or some of these cases actually have to diagnose the car in person. It's kind of hard to just, here's a trouble code, what's going on with it. And then I would be like the guy throwing parts at it. It's kind of hard to do that on the fly, but the live stream was very interesting, honestly, the first time and ongoing. But it got to a point where, okay, I'm doing a live stream every 2-3 weeks. It's all over the place. It's random. And then actually the viewers started kind of, hey, can we have a structured time? Because I always miss the live stream. I'm like, okay, well, let's do the structured time. I asked them, I asked them a lot in the community tab, and we arrived at Saturday at 7 p.m. So now the schedule is every 3 Saturdays at 7 p.m. and then 1 Saturday off. So basically 3 live streams a month. That's really working to keep up with all their questions, any help they need. I am there. Maybe I'm not reachable very well by email, or there's a lot of delay, but at least there is another medium where they can, if they have a question, they can get an answer. And, the intent always is to help people.
And so how many people are you averaging on these? Like, is it from 352 to what are you at now? I see the most viewed one is 36,000, but obviously people can come back after.
The highest one, I think one of them got very close to 500 people at one point. Most of them average still from 350 to 450.
Yeah. Which is good for viewership.
I can never.
Yeah.
I wish I could just sit there for like 4 hours, run my voice down, and just answer actually every single question. But it's of course it's really difficult. But
it's the same as speaking in a very large hall at a college. You know, we had I went to Oregon State University, and it's like, you know, we have this Milam 26 hall, and it's like you always get a couple hundred people in there. So it's, you know, you're given a course every Saturday. You're an adjunct professor almost at this point. For the YouTube community and the Toyota community, which is fantastic. And I love, like, I'm a big diagnose it type of guy. Like, that's my favorite thing. I am a bit of an automotive masochist as well, where I buy a lot of cars that need work, which is just, that's something, you know, I like to do. I like to tinker. I like to figure out. Or I'll be like driving. I'm like, hey, what is that noise now? And then like I have the windows down, and my fiance's like, why do we have the windows down? I'm like, because there's just something coming from the from the left rear that I think I can hear. No, but that's awesome that you get to do that. So
only car guys will understand why car guys buy old heaps of junk and pretend they are the best thing in the world. Only car guys understand that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
We've had a lot of car people on this, and I grew up with a dad who literally is like, buy a car new and don't work on it, keep it in the value, and at 7 years, sell it. Like,
see, that is smart.
That's not a bad way to do it.
I'm not going to take the leap and say car guys are not, but we enjoy the suffering sometimes.
Yeah. He also told me always bring it to the dealership and never put anything not. You know, don't modify the car because it lowers the value. Now, obviously, I know JP really well, and like he's influenced me and the people on the podcast. I'm like, man, I want to buy a project car because I like working on stuff. But then it goes back to what we were talking about before we started. I don't have any freaking time because I got 2 little kids. It's a predicament. But hey, JP, I don't know if you have any other. I'm good as of questions right now. This is awesome. I really can't. Enough for this. This is an amazing experience to get to know your story and find out how you got to YouTube, how you figure out your creative process. It's really fun.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much. It's been really nice. I really appreciate you guys having me.
No, this is great.
Absolutely.
I hope you're.
I got a couple more questions. One is, why does Toyota hate the United States and North America and not allow us to have a Yaris GR? Bring it back to the 3-cylinder turbo days, because that's just, you know. That's a travesty.
Look, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of red tape for me with Toyota with certain things, but I'll try to give you the most politically correct answer where I wouldn't get in trouble.
Please do.
The problem is enthusiast cars in the US specifically. So Toyota brought the Supra back, and even back when we go to the beloved Mark IV Supra, well, nobody bought it. See, that's the problem with enthusiasts. They love cars, but they don't buy them.
Toyota people don't. But like if you go to BMW, I feel like there's a cult following for like the M series, and they can do like a special edition of an M and sell the 65 units they do. But like Toyota people,
65. But here's the thing.
Yeah,
these car companies, they're businesses.
Right.
Numbers. Here's how in the best way possible that I can put it. Toyota looks at it this way: should we invest $10 million in R&D to make a car that we're going to make 2,000 units and probably lose all the $10 million and never recoup it back, or should we spend that $10 million on a new platform that will put all our hot selling cars on and lower our costs, and people will love it because now this old boring car now drives much better? Which one do you think makes business sense?
Definitely.
Toyota's one thing about Toyota is they make very good cars and they have a very good production process, but they're also very good business people. And that's the biggest thing. When people hated the new Supra, the BMW Supra, they called it.
Yeah.
But you know what?
Z4.
They tried, and they did not burn themselves, because even if the Supra fails, financially, they're not hit. And that's a big deal because
they leveraged it by using a partnership, and 50%. I mean, they did it with the 86 as well. Did that with Supra or Subaru.
The 86 was actually more of a joint venture than the BMW Supra, because the 86, the engine is from Subaru, but there's a lot of components on that engine that's actually from Toyota, starting with the D4S, the direct injection. That's 100% Toyota. But the Supra, it is essentially a BMW with a body designed by Toyota. It is 100% BMW. I mean, I'll give you an example from my side. The scan tool that accesses all Toyotas, called TechStream, you can actually connect to the 86 with TechStream. So it's on the same level of communication. The Supra, it's a completely different scan tool. Basically, we're using the BMW scan tool, ISTA or whatever it's called, Toyota ISTA now. It's a completely different thing. So that's where it goes with enthusiast cars. It's the business decision more than anything else.
Yep, I hear you. Yeah, no, I'm just curious. I know the RCR thing.
I will say that the response here was much better than a previous response we had from the sales side. I understand exactly. You're like, you made it very clear. Like they're in the market to hit the mass market, and they want to sell as many units as possible. So that makes sense.
So then one other thing that we want to ask, and you've kind of talked and alluded to it a little bit, just in the YouTube community, and we're always interested as far as other YouTubers, YouTube channels, whether related to what you're doing now or just kind of passion plays and things that you like to relax and watch. Like, what are you watching on YouTube? Who are you subscribed to? What are some of your favorites?
Well, I've always watched Legit Street Cars.
He's great.
Somewhat of a similar, very hardworking guy, actual experienced mechanic. To me, the biggest thing is his heart is in the right place, and he loves people. He's very enthusiastic about what he does. He's a good guy. He's a genuinely good guy. Another guy that I watch is Tavares. Yeah. Honestly, not as much lately, because I just feel like I like Tavares more when he was in his garage than he was in his big shop. I don't know. It's just something that personal taste, and something for me to remember, that just because you get big on YouTube or whatnot, I am just me. I'm not. Nothing about me changed. Maybe I have a lot of followers, or people are watching my videos a lot more, but I am still the same person. I should remain the same person. And another person I watched, actually, Huey's Garage. I really like him. I think he's hilarious. And Car Wizard, I watch here and there.
That's what I was wondering if now, because now that's the, I mean, he's in that whole group, but the Car Wizard, he's almost picked up where Tavares maybe left off in some of that.
Yeah, Car Wizard is awesome. I mean, the guy is very. He has a way to him, and I can see why people love him. It's the same thing I respect him a lot for, because he has a way. He's talking to you. He's not yelling at you. He has like this calm voice to him, where he's explaining, where it's like, this is someone you can trust. And he is trustworthy. The guy is honest, and he's very clear. And I love the way that it's a wife and husband type, where this is our family business. He's a very transparent person. I really like watching his videos. I don't watch a lot of his videos as much as I'd like, mainly because I don't have a lot of time. But sometimes I'm watching my daily job, because it's literally in a shop. It's like the same. I see the wizard around me every single day.
Yeah.
So, but other than that, I recently picked up watching Automotive Press. I don't know if you guys. I actually did a video recently with him. David, he's an automotive engineer. He's a really cool guy. Watched a few of his videos lately, mainly because I wanted to get to know him as well before we did the video and everything. But he has a very interesting perspective on things. He's an automotive engineer. He's Japanese, and you don't get a lot of Japanese guys talking about cars in English. They are very interesting people, and how their thought process is fascinating.
Yeah.
I just watched a couple of his videos recently as well. I think just on the latest release of vehicles. So I've been doing a lot of research, and he was one of the people that I watched, and I was much more surprised than I thought I was going to be. So I ended up watching a ton of his videos, and I really do enjoy his content.
Oh.
Yeah.
There's a really cool artist that you should look at. I was thinking about this early on when you were talking about the chords and the frets changing from bass to regular guitar. There's a guy named Burls Art. And he makes some guitars out of like pencils and really, really interesting guitars, as well as a bunch of other art. But you'll really like his content. He's really
What was his name again?
Burls Art. I'll email it to you.
Yeah, email it to me.
Yeah. So if you need it, JP, you got another question?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, essentially, love to see, what you're doing on like YouTube, just, outside of like your everyday stuff, like who else are you following? So it's always good to get an idea of some of those folks. So I appreciate that. I think the last thing that we do is kind of tee it up for you and say, hey, like, what do you have, what's coming up? Tell everyone where they can follow you. When you post, when you're doing the live streams, give everyone the lay of the land, how they can follow you and stay up to date with what you're doing.
Okay, so follow me on the channel at the Car Care Nut. My posting schedule is going to be Wednesday at 10:45 Central Time and Saturday at 10:45 Central Time. I have a live stream three Saturdays out of the month at 7 p.m. Central Time. The fourth Saturday of the month is time for the family, so we can have some family time finally. I still answer every single comment. Everybody sometimes tells me, you can let that go. Even viewers have told me, you can let that go. But I'm still committed to that. That's exactly what I'm going to be doing after we wrap up this podcast. But yeah, it's a pretty big pile up right now. So I got to get to that. But if you're ever on my channel, you're welcome to follow me on the channel, subscribe to the channel, or I do show sneak peeks on Instagram, not just from the channel. I actually show you sneak peeks from work. So you're going to see things that not usually seen. It seems like today you can very easily find a video on a Lamborghini engine torn apart, but not a normal car you see every day on the street. That's the interesting thing. So if anybody's interested, follow me on Instagram. That's what I post a lot of on Instagram. And thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
No, this is super fun. We really love hearing the stories. And I think for me, there's no of the same story of how people got to YouTube. Everyone is different. Everyone is unique. And I'm surprised every week at the story. So thank you for telling yours and inspiring someone. So I hope that those who listen this far, if you didn't get inspired to make your channel, this is the call to action. Go and make a channel, create, do something, experiment, fail a couple times. You'll find your way on YouTube. I guarantee it.
And don't let the negative comments get to you.
Only one. Just let one, and then brush it off and go for it. Yeah.
And then grow the thick skin and go for it.
That's right.
Focus on the positive, not the negative.
Well, thanks so much to everyone listening. We wouldn't be here without you guys. Well, we probably would. We still like talking to YouTubers. We do it anyway. But make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like us, and head over to the Car Care Nut and make sure you subscribe to that channel. All of his social medias will be in the description or the bio below, depending on if you're listening or if you're watching. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you next week with another episode.